Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 602 to 604 for the 18th to the 20th of October for the Ukraine war or the special military operation in Ukraine. And I say I want to do it daily, and then I failed. Yeah, shit happens, and yeah, lately I have burnout, so no, yeah, burnout, so I just sleep more. Like I wanted to do this yesterday, and just then I went to sleep. So yeah. So let's start off with Black Sea. At the Black Sea, there is one unmanned surface vessel (USV) that was neutralized according to the Russian Defense Ministry. Whatever the word neutralized means, up to you to decide what that's supposed to mean. No, maybe they add acid because it's alkaline, or no, maybe it's a yeah, no. Anyway, yeah, it was that's all from it from the Black Sea. There is a Russian Sukhoi 25 that was shot down over Ukraine on the 18th of October. We do not know what is the where is it shot down, and the Russians also claim a Ukrainian Sukhoi 25 was shot down over Dnipro. This comes along with a MiG-29 that was shot down over Troitsky on the 19th. So this one was on the 19th as well. This is shot down by the Air Force. This is shot down by Air Defense. So like again, yet another long range air defense that was taking out aircraft from distance. The distance from the front line this time round is over 100 kilometers. So it's a very long range surface to air missile system shoot down. And there's also a Mi 8. Where's the Mi 8? Where's the Mi 8? The Mi 8 is also Mi 8 was shot down over Zaporizhzhia. This is also shot down by air defense, but this is much nearer. This is merely around 10-20 kilometers, around 20 kilometers away from the front line. We go to the southern front. At the southern front, the Ukrainians finally break out of their beachhead or bridgehead, or depending on it's a bridge or the beach, because there is both of them. So the Ukrainian forces basically push out in multiple directions, and this is after previously they have we have seen information about the capture of Poima and Prishenivka. According to Ryba, which also the breaker of this information, they claim that the Ukrainians have been eliminated, but there was no indication that the Russian forces actually entered the ground. So even if the Ukrainians make a withdrawal from these locations, this territory will still remain blue because the Russians have not retaken it. So this is how we do the mapping here on DPA. So we will continue as such until the Russian forces retakes Poima and Prishenivka. Otherwise, it's going to remain as blue color. So the same thing as Robotine or Klishchievka is the same thing. Robotine, maybe the Ukrainian forces cannot station forces within the village. Same for Klishchievka. That doesn't change the fact that it is still captured by the Ukrainian forces. Until the Russians re-enter the villages, then it will still be considered blue. So on top of the previous information that previously we have reported about this capture, there is more reinforcement. There's a rotation of the forces, of the Ukrainian forces over this area here. They continue to maybe send out casualties and send in more fresh troops. And they also sent reinforcement towards Prishenivka. According to the information from Ryba, the 501 separate battalion of the 36th Infantry Brigade was transferred, and they landed and going to head towards to strengthen the position over at Prishenivka. So this information is the last that I've seen of this area here. There was a fighting being reported on the 18th of October towards Stepny, and it was reportedly foiled according to the Russian Defense Ministry. So the fact that they mentioned about Poima and Pestepnove shows that the Russian forces acknowledge the Ukrainian presence, and they are now actively combating this thing over here. So but according to the Russian Defense Ministry, they call this only recon forces. They only call them sabotage and reconnaissance. So So they do not take these troops or these advances very seriously. They see them as very small forces. So that's the Russian perspective, or at least they just want to downplay it. Over at the area of Krinky, the Krinky was attacked on the 19th of October. According to Ryba, they reported that the 35th Separate Infantry Brigade of the Ukrainian Marines attacked Krinky, and they managed to gain a foothold. And after that, the Russian artillery and helicopters attacked and pushed the Ukrainians back. So the Ukrainian forces actually spread out pretty much around Krinky, and then after they're getting bombarded by the Russians, they have to withdraw back into one small area here, and they somewhat either hold a position or await rescue from the Navy. So the last information that we have seen is actually by Ryba. They say that the Russian forces is now making efforts to destroy this group within the village in the northern outskirts of the village of Krinky, which means the Ukrainian forces may have already withdrawn out of the village after they find it untenable. The Russian forces are somewhat giving chase in this way. And this presence of this fighting at Krinky is actually confirmed with geolocation by Creamy Caprice. There is a FPV drone attack against the Ukrainian forces in the village of Krinky. So this confirmed this entire engagement is real. It actually happened. Tentatively, it does seem like the advance, this landing and this attempt at capturing Krinky may not have succeeded. So that's all from the Kherson Front. We move into the Zaporizhzhia Front. So this is the Zaporizhzhia. Oh, wrong color. This is the What's that's worse, man? This is the Zaporizhzhia Front, and over at the Orikhiv sector. At the Orikhiv sector, we have continued fighting around this area here. The Ukrainian forces continue to attack in the north of Verbove, towards Verbove, southwest of Verbove, and towards Novoprokopivka. The Russians counter-attack over at Robotine, and that's about it. So the initiative went back to the Ukrainians. There is geolocation of Ukrainian forces within Robotine, but they were shelled by the Russian forces. The Ukrainian push towards the west of Robotine seems to have stopped. We haven't seen any reports about this advance over at the western side. The Russians reportedly were counter-attacking on the 20th of October, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. And the fighting over in Novoprokopivka, we're not sure actually if it's northeast or actually is the north, or is it in the east. There is actually no indication. Deep State UA talk about clashes and fighting around Novoprokopivka, but actually there was no clear information where the fighting is occurring. Is it here? So I tentatively put it as northeast, because this is the most common area where the Ukrainians are making advances over on the Novoprokopivka region. The Russian forces is geolocated over at this position along the tree line on the east of Novoprokopivka, which shows the Russians actually are making some kind of progress. They are moving up along this area here, but it doesn't change the fact that the Ukrainians are still pushing in the southwest of Verbove and towards Verbove. In the southwest of Verbove, we have fighting on the 19th of October, according to Deep State UA, and on the Verbove itself undergo attacks over the past 3 days. 18, 19, 20, there was reports from the Russian Defense Ministry, and the latest from Deep State UA of the Ukrainian push towards Verbove. And a geolocation of Ukrainian forces along the road have basically shows that this on the 18th of October shows that the Russians advances over this area has been negated. The Ukrainian forces have counterattacked. How far have they gone is kind of unclear at this moment. The geolocation is basically the geolocation of the front line of the Ukrainian forces making the push along the road. In the north of Verbove, according to Deep State UA, they say that there is fighting north of Verbove, and they say that it's partial success. I'm not sure how north is the north, because we have no indication that Ukrainians have actually pushed this much to the north of Verbove. So we shall continue to monitor and see what is this real situation around here. And then there's another weird report coming from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 18th of October. They say that the Russian forces were repelled in the east of Malatomashka. So Malatomashka is here. East would probably means that the Russian forces are around here, which probably is not. I'm not exactly sure. So unless they are saying that the Russians have pushed out from Novosilka and are moving up to the west of Velyka. Yeah, just take this with a pinch of salt, because Ukrainian Defense Ministry sometimes, depending on the person who write the report, sometimes they will just pick locations very randomly. So moving away, over at the Hulyaipole sector, there is clashes over at the Chervony region. In the south of Chervony, there is a Russian Defense Ministry report on the 18th of October of Ukrainian forces attacking the Russians' position, and and the Russian Defense Ministry also reported that they actually went on the counter on the 19th. So the initial report on the 18th, and then on the 19th the Russians actually went on the counter attack, and of course this doesn't really make much because it's pretty much fire mission. It's not an assault. So that's all from the situation over at the Chervony region in the Hulyaipole sector. On the western part, as the most eastern part, there is geolocation of Ukrainian forces within Melanivka, and this is actually still within the Hulyaipole sector. And just at the very edge of Hulyaipole sector, at the Potovka region, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 20th of October reported the Russians attack in the area of Potovka. We haven't seen any fighting at Potovka region since forever. So this is actually very, very interesting that the Russians are making this push in this direction. So it's something important to note, whether Ukrainian forces will be able to hold this, because this is kind of an unusual place for the Russians to attack. And I do need to add a star here. Yeah. So moving on over at the Velyka Novosilka sector. So this is the Velyka Novosilka sector. At the Velyka Novosilka sector, we have continued fighting around the Priony region, with fighting being reported south of Novosilka. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, they say that they are attacking Ukrainian forces near to Novosilka. And over at the northwest of Priony, the Russian forces claim that there is recon forces of the Ukrainian forces was destroyed in the northwest of Priony. The Ukrainian Defense Ministry reported that the Russians attacked in the north of Priony. Sorry, it's Deep State UA reported that, and whereas the Russian Defense Ministry reported that the Ukrainians were in the north of Priony. So pretty much the Russians are attacking probably in this region. We are not sure what is the real front line like. It's kind of a weird reports, a weird series of reports, so just take it with a pinch of salt. Over at this Rivnopil region, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry also reported that they repelled Russian attacks near Rivnopil. So maybe the Russians are attacking this area here. They are moving in these directions in some kind of a medium air offensive, but it's not sure. We didn't see any OSINT talk about it. Over at the Staromayorsky region, there is fighting reported at Staromayorsky. The Russian forces are on the offensive in this area here from the 19th to the 20th. Russian Defense Ministry and Ukrainian Defense Ministry both reported this attack. They both corroborated this on both days. So on 19 and 20. So even Ryba reported this on the 20th. So which means that the attack in the Staromayorsky region seems to be a little bit more serious than usual. That we see a corroboration on both sides of the defense ministries. And but we shall see whether this will go anywhere serious. That's all from the Velyka Novosilka sector. We move into the Donetsk Front. So this is the Donetsk Front. At the Donetsk Front, over at the Zolota Neva or Novodonetsky, Prishestivka, Novomayorsky. So this quadcopter region, there is fighting reported near Zolota Neva on the 19th to 20th, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. The Russian Defense Ministry and Ukrainian Defense Ministry on separate days, 18th and the 20th, both reported fighting in the area of Novomayorsky, which means that the Ukrainian forces, despite they give up Novomayorsky, they are actually still entrenched in a very close position to Novomayoske, which means that when the Russians actually push out, the fighting is still pretty much considered to be around the Novomayoske region. So this is actually pretty interesting. We move on to over the Voleda city region. We have fighting reported on the 19th of October of an attack near Voleda, but it only happens on one day, so no, this is nothing to shout about. I think it's nothing very significant. We move on to the Marinka Novomihailivka region. This basically this area here. Over the Novomihailivka region, there is reports of fighting south of Novomihailivka. According to the Vostok group of forces, on the 19th of October, with the Ukrainians pushing south, and there was geolocation on the 18th of October of Ukrainian forces getting hammered by the flamethrower system. Then the fighting, and then the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, Russian Defense Ministry both reported of the Russian push in the area of Novomihailivka, and most likely they are actually pushing from the east due to the fact that we have geolocation of Russian forces on the 19th of October, showing them pushing in this direction towards Novomihailivka. So the attack vector is likely coming from the east of Novomihailivka. So we move on to Marinka. At the Marinka, we still have continued fighting reported over here, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry and the Russian Defense Ministry, and together they report all 3 days that the Russians are pushing at Marinka. So this is getting very, very boring over here. So it's very, very boring, Marinka. There is geolocation south of Krasnohorivka. Ukrainian forces is along the tree line again, and the Russians are at this mine, Trudovska mine region. So the front line continue to be as such, with the Russian forces holding a forward position and along the tree line to the rear. So this is pretty much the situation, and they just continue to hammer each other south of Krasnohorivka. And that's all from the Donetsk Front. Over at the Avdiivka Front, this is the Avdiivka Front. At the Avdiivka Front, the Russian offensive resumes. So after they kind of pause a day or two, the Russian offensive at the Avdiivka region restarts again, with fighting reported towards Novokalinove, towards Stepove, towards Badaichi, towards the north of Avdiivka, south of Avdiivka, at Zhevene, towards Leshtokine, and in the area of Vodian and Pervomayske. So the Russians continue their offensive in this massive pincer movement that we are seeing, and then there's a double pincer in a much more further distance, and further pressure from the south. So this already I have mentioned pretty much a few times already. So the significance, as usual, is going to be Badaichi, Semenivka, Olivka, Tonenke, Zhevene, and Leshtokine itself is also a primary target. So any of these villages falling is a great disaster for the Ukrainian forces defending Avdiivka. So over at the Pervomayske region, the fighting was reported on the 20th by the Ukrainian side. They reported about this attack. There's fighting near Vodian, according to Deep State UA. Previously, the marker was put here, and I feel that because the Russians are pushing in this direction, and there was a push towards the west previously at Vodian, so I decided to move the marker to the left, to the west of Vodian. I think this makes a lot more sense, because this would be strategically sensible as they attack towards Netelove, and which then will cut off the Ukrainians from attacking towards south of Pervomayske. And there is fighting, there's geolocation of the front line, as you can see, Kreminna Front, and I think it's all Kreminna Front. Yes, we can actually see the Ukrainian forces along this tree line and the Russians along this other tree line. So the front line is pretty much established along this tree line region, and this is very, very interesting. They are actually very close. If you look at this front line, since we can confirm by geolocation from Tonenke, is pretty much just less than 2 kilometers away, and then this is basically one patch of farmland that was totally not farmed right now. And at Zhevene, the front line is probably also not very far, just 1 kilometer. So the front line is very, very close. The Russians can anytime make a pretty successful move, but of course that really purely dependent on the Ukrainian defenses. So if the Ukrainian defenses can hold, then that's probably not a problem. But if they suddenly fail to hold and they got surprised, the Russians can easily take these two villages in a very quick time, because it is too near, and with the fall of these two, there will be fire fire range. What is it called? I forgot the word. Basically, the fire control, along the road along Leshtokini, and they can actually launch a direct assault on Leshtokini and Orikhiv, and Avdiivka will be entirely encircled. In the south of Avdiivka, there is fighting reported in this area here from the 18th, 19th to the 20th, according to all the different trusted sources, Ukrainian Ryba, Ukrainian Defense Ministry and Ryba. Geolocation of the Ukrainian forces on the 18th of October, this tree line shows that the Ukrainian forces are still holding the forest region, and this is looking like a butt accidentally, and the Russian forces still have not managed to penetrate the butt. So they just have to wait, because this is not butt-like enough. Over in the north of Avdiivka, the Russian forces continued their attempt to conquer the volcano, the slag heap. Slag heap is very ugly, doesn't sound very nice, so I call it a volcano. And so DPA UA and Ryba reported about the fighting on the 19th to 20th, because on the 19th the Russian forces resumed their attack. They continued to push. Allegedly, according to Russian sources, Ukrainian forces have been pushed out of the volcano, and they hold the line behind the railway line as the Russian forces overwhelm them. All these attacks at Avdiivka comes at heavy losses. There is a lot of geolocation and drone footage of blown up Russian armor. So, which means that this push, despite there is heavy losses, the Russians are still continuing to make push, which is why in one of the previous SITREP I say Russia is serious, because Russia seldom is so serious that they will follow through with the offensive, and they are following through the offensive. This shows the commitment to this offensive, and they're taking this very seriously, which is kind of unsettling, because Russia usually don't take their offensive very seriously. So the Russians are taking heavy losses, but they are still moving. Heavy losses are nothing in war, because ultimately the Russians or the Soviet Union lost more men than Nazi Germany, but they still won the war. Over at Stepove, fighting was reported on the 19th to 20th, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, whereas Deep State UA is not so bullish about the Russians' position, so they say that the fighting is from Krasnohorivka. The Russian lines previously reaches all the way to the edge of Berdaichi. According to Ryba, on the 19th of October, the Russian forces have withdrawn back to the railway line, because they cannot hold the position as the Ukrainians counterattacked to push them back to the railway line. So but in the latest report by Ryba on the 20th of October, the Russians are again pushing towards the Berdaichi area. So let's see how this goes, whether the Russians can actually succeed. Over in the north of Krasnohorivka, we have geolocation of Ukrainian forces, showing that the Ukrainian forces still holding a good position north of Krasnohorivka, whereas the Ukrainian Defense Ministry continue to report that the Russians are pushing for Novosilka, and they are the only information source that talks about Novosilka. So that's all from the Avdiivka front. We move into the Bakhmut front. At the Bakhmut front, there is some major news. The Russian forces have launched their Bakhmut offensive, their own Bakhmut offensive, with a push at Bohdanivka, Kromove, and Klishchiivka, Andriivka, and Kodyomivka. Particularly the ones at the north is very surprising, because the fighting at Kromove has not been seen since the Battle of Bakhmut. So the Russian Defense Ministry acknowledged this, and from the 18th to the 20th, they are pushing for Kromove. And in the Ukrainian Defense Ministry also mentioned about Bohdanivka on the 20th, which means that there was a new push from the Russians at Bohdanivka, and I'm not sure this will end up become a pincer movement, which is kind of unlikely, because this area here is very hard to break through, because there's way too many defenses and trench lines So, but it is interesting that the Russians are making moves to attack Kromove. This is very, very unnecessary unless there is a real need or there's a real attempt at doing an offensive out of Bakhmut. So let's see how this goes in the north. In the south is the usual actually. The Ukrainian forces continue their fighting at Kupyansk on the 20th. And then over at Klishevka on the 19th to the 20th, according to the Russian Defense Ministry and Deep State UA. But it seems that the tide of war seems to be swinging to the Russians. From the 18th to the 20th, Russian Defense Ministry, Ukrainian Defense Ministry all reported that the Russians are attacking at Klishevka. And this also stretched on to Andriivka, with the Russian Defense Ministry acknowledging that they were attacking on the 18th to the 19th. And at Kupyansk itself, there is also the same report by the Russian Defense Ministry. So the Russian Defense Ministry reporting this means that they are acknowledging that they are making an offensive or some kind of push in this direction, and the aim is to push the Ukrainians back to the canal. And this is going to be quite a task because the Ukrainians are still acknowledging that they are on the offensive in the Bakhmut Front. So let's see how this goes. Geolocation of Ukrainian forces on the 20th of October over this position shows that the Ukrainians are still holding position north of Kupyansk. So basically this is the situation here. So this is the Bakhmut Front, and we move on into the Svatova Front. There is no reports at the Svatova Front. This is Svatova, and we move into the Kreminna Front. So this is Kreminna. At the Kreminna Front, the Russian forces reportedly were attacking on the 20th of October in the Serebranske forestry. And that's about it though. There is geolocation of Russian forces over on this road along the trees, the forest, which is previously established as Russian controlled. So there's nothing new to this. Ukrainian forces were established this position, southwestern part of Dniprova. So Ukrainians are here, so that actually shows that our mapping is still pretty much correct. And there is fighting reported at Dniprova from the 18th to the 19th, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. The Ukrainian forces are pushing Dniprova, but so far this has been an ongoing thing. I don't think we should feel anything special about this. And we move further up north. There is fighting reported at Nevsky, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. On the 20th of October, the Russians are pushing Nevsky, and they are also continuing their attack over at Makiivka, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry and Deep State UA. From the 18th to the 19th, Ukrainian forces were counter-attacking on the 19th to 20th, according to the Russian Defense Ministry. So the Russians are pushing. They were pushing at Makiivka. So again, they were pushing at Makiivka, and then the Ukrainian forces counterattack. They counterattack against the Russian forces, and as they counterattack, the Russian forces attack Nevsky. So this is likely to be a tactical move. They're going to force the Ukrainians to redeploy to Nevsky, since the Russian forces is getting pushed back over at the Makiivka region. So this might be what is currently happening, tactical battles. Moving further up north into the Svatova Front. This is Svatova. At Svatova Front, there is continued fighting over in the region of Novosilka and Nadia. So at Novosilka, the Ukrainian forces continue their attack. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, on the 19th to the 20th, they are pushing. Whereas they also mentioned about Serhievka on the 18th. So this is the Ukrainian push. The Russians are pushing over at Ryhorivka and Nadia. Information coming from the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, and also at also by Deep State UA. So Deep State UA mentioned Ryhorivka, and the Ukrainian Defense Ministry mentioned Nadia. So it could be pretty much the same offensive in this area here. So that's all from the Svatova Front. There is also fighting reported at Novosilka, according to the Deep State UA, from the 19th to the 20th. It was not mentioned by the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, so take this with a pinch of salt. And we move on to the Kupyansk Front. So this is Kupyansk. This city here is Kupyansk, and the Russian offensive at their Russian Kupyansk offensive is still ongoing from Liman Pershi-Sinkivka on the northern flank, and then from the eastern flank in the area of Ivanivka Khaistivka. And west of Orikhiv. So the Ukrainian forces are counter-attacking at Sinkivka. They attack at Pershotravneve towards Orikhiv, Ivanivka. So this is the overall strategic situation in this area here. And we move into the details. There is fighting reported at Khyslivka on the 18th, Ivanivka on the 19th to 20th, and the Orlyansk region on the 19th. So they are actually rotating a bit. They're attacking here and then here and then here. They are changing around and forcing the Ukrainian forces to to travel around and defensively try to deal with this Russian attack. There is geolocation of Ukrainian forces over this tree line, which clearly shows this is actually where the Ukrainian front line is. So the Russians are attacking in this area here, and both are supported by tanks. So it is a hard battle around this western part of Orlyansk. The Ukrainian forces were reportedly counterattacking on the 18th, 19th, and 20th. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, the Ukrainian forces are conducting attacks, and I'm not sure if this is they are referring to the entire area or just Ivanivka. So let's see how these advances go. Over at Pershotravneve, we haven't seen this word for a long time, since 2 months ago, 14th of August, and so the Russian Defense Ministry reported the Ukrainians attack in the area of Pershotravneve. So maybe this is just an attempt to force the Russians to redeploy north and to deal with this sudden attack. The attack comes on the 18th, but it didn't. It was not sustained. It didn't happen on the 19th to the 20th. So, which means this is just a probing attack. This is just a distraction. Geolocation of Ukrainian forces at Petropavlivka. So this continues to show Ukrainian presence. And then over at the Sinkivka region, we have the Russians continue their offensive according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry from the 18th, 19th to 20th. And then Liman Pershi, as usual, is only reported by Deep State UA from the 19th to the 20th. The Russian Defense Ministry reported on the 18th, 19th, and 20th the Ukrainians are actually on the counter-attack. So if you look in this way, that it could be a case where the Russians are attacking and the Ukrainians are actually actively pushing back as well. So it is a even clash between the two sides. So yeah, so let's see how this goes. There is still no clear winner over at the Kupyansk Front. Battles are still raging over at this area here. Yeah, and that's it. This is the SITREP for the day of 602 to 604 for the 18th to the 20th of October. And just some admin. So previously, the plan is to do SITREP and post it exclusively behind a paywall, and then the conclusion part I will crop out to put it on the public publishing. But because to save time due to the Israeli Hamas war, I have to reduce the amount of time I spend editing so that I can cover more stuff. So instead, we will have the SITREP on the delayed telecast, whereas the paying members will get it in advance. They will get it first, and then the rest, the public, will get a delayed telecast like what you are seeing now if you are watching on YouTube right now. And if you are not non-paying members, yeah, it will be scheduled after whatever other scheduled videos, so that there is some space to let the previous video to have airtime before we publish this, to avoid cannibalism. So anyway, thank you for watching, and yeah, I'll see you in the next update.